So today we're going to talk about the models of relational dynamics. All right, so the first stage is initiating. This is when you're putting your feelers out there to begin with of do they like you? Do you think that you might want to be friends with this person or start a relationship with this person? So it's the initial contact, which means that those first impressions really matter. The second stage would be experimenting, so inviting them out casually, more than just this convenience kind of dating or convenience contact. So this might be something where you make a friend in the classroom and you guys decide to actually hang out outside of class. So making some more time to extend the friendship or relationship. The next stage would be intensifying. This is when you start to establish kind of titles for each other. You might say, they're my boyfriend, they're my girlfriend, they're my partner, they're my friend. So this is when you feel solidified that you've actually created a relationship, and that comes with titles as one of the biggest markers. Then it's integrating each other into your routine. So maybe there's a person that you call on a regular basis. Maybe you have some things like a couples routine that you do together. So you know that you reserve Friday nights for going out with this person. Maybe you have a set of things that you like to do together, like working out on a certain day of the week. So this might be something that you know that this time is kind of reserved for them, or you start to integrate them as a regular person that you call on a daily basis or something like that. Then the bonding, this is when you take it to an even more intense level. So in a relationship, that might be marriage, it might be moving in together. In a best friend relationship, this might even be deciding to be roommates, or even more cemented, this is my best friend. You're going to be a partner for a long time. Sometimes we find that even just long-term partners start to create this bonding relationship. They say that if you have a friendship over 7 years, that pretty much ensures that it's going to last a lifetime. So just think about the relationships that you have in your own life and how long they've lasted and how much potential they have to last this really long time versus the relationships that you have that maybe start to fade out after a few years or even after a class ends. All of a sudden, that friend that you talk to every class period, some of those friendships will continue while other friendships will start to fade out. And now that you no longer have classes together, you no longer see each other. Or for people that have moved, that might be something to think about. So the bonds are really what holds you together through those tumultuous times. So this is when you're out of the honeymoon stage in the relationship and you're starting to think about the long-term things, which means there's issues that maybe have come up and you've been able to power through them. All right, so differentiating, this is a stage of starting to come apart. This is when you start to try to have different identities. So what used to be things that you used to do together might be things that you want to have as your own time. So differentiating a lot of times starts with having less time together, or maybe that person that you used to call on a regular basis, now all of a sudden you're like, well, I kind of just want to relax and not feel obligated to talking to them. That obligation that you're letting go of is also differentiating. So you're going, hey, I need more me time than we time. And so just thinking about that in a relationship when that starts to happen. The next one is circumscribing. So this is when you actually start to spend more time apart and also start to see yourselves as separate. So instead of going, oh yeah, I'm always with my best friend, you can see yourselves as a unit. Maybe you had that friend in your life that you always were so together that they do that melding of your names, or when you were in a couple and they were always together, it seemed like they were always just that couple rather than two separate people. When you go through the circumscribing phase in a relationship, you end up having, oh, these are just my friends, not everything we do together. And you start to reclaim that independence to the level of now you're no longer seeing yourselves as a unit. And so this is a big part of the coming apart stage. In a healthy relationship, there is time that you would want to spend apart, but the circumscribing tends to be more of you don't want to be seen as always with them. A lot of people, when they're ending a relationship, start to develop new hobbies. And this is it's always, again, good to have hobbies separate from your partner, but when you start to develop them so much that you kind of are searching to reclaim your own identity, or you're starting to build your own network again, aside from them. So this can be kind of red flags that something might be happening in your relationship that's leading towards that downturn. The stagnating, you start to fall into the routine where they're no longer bringing joy, they're just kind of around. This is also when you stop almost fighting about things. You start to just be like, ugh, nothing's going to change. Let's not even talk about it. Or you run into those routine fights where you start having that fight over and over again, where it doesn't feel like you're making progress. Nobody's trying to change things up anymore. It tends to be that same rhythm. And so this can be a really detrimental part in relationships and something to think about. Also, when you're not trying new things with people, it means you're also not trying to grow with them. And so stagnating can be this really hard time in a relationship because you figured out that they're no longer growing with you. You're kind of just living together or being around each other. And then avoiding, this is when it starts to get really bad, and near the end of a relationship, you start to not even want to see them. So it went from just having separate time with each other from each other to now you actively start to avoid them, or you make other plans. So it's one thing if occasionally you have to cancel on somebody, but it's another thing when they're not even in your mindset for making plans, and you start to kind of avoid them, make sure to keep yourself really busy. So also you might have heard this near the end of a relationship where all of a sudden the person just has way less time to spend with you, or is bringing up the I'm just so busy right now. Busy is really a lot of times code for I'm avoiding you, or I'm not making you a priority anymore. And so this can be a really big turn for the downfall in a relationship. And then terminating. Unfortunately, not all relationships last. Some relationships terminate. And as much as it's hard to say, these can take place in many different ways. So sometimes there's a formal termination of, hey, I just don't think this is working out. Maybe we should break up. Or it could be the slow fade out of, hey, we're just spending less and less time together. And then you find that maybe you spent every few weeks you saw the person, to once a month you saw the person, to a few months, to major holidays you maybe get a text, to all of a sudden you're not hearing from them at all. And so there's a way of fading out. There's also ghosting, of course, and as painful as this is and as big of a trend as it is, it's one of the worst things that you can do to somebody because they can't grieve immediately. You maybe know that you're over it when you ghost somebody, but the other person doesn't get to have that closure. So they're in this liminal state for a lot longer. One way, if you've ever been ghosted, to kind of help with these feelings is note that that is actually an active form of communication, and you can also take back your control if you want, and you could actually send the terminating message yourself, even though they're kind of sending you the terminating messages with their nonverbals. You can actually still just send the text, whether they blocked you or you see it. You can just send that final notice of, hey, I don't think that we are communicating anymore, and I just want to formally end it like an adult. And so this can be something to think about. Again, something to think about with this whole thing is not all relationships go through this complete cycle. Hopefully most of your relationships begin in this maintenance stage, and also they don't necessarily have this linear format that the cycle likes to bring up. So it's not always building and building and then going down and terminating. You might skip whole steps. There might be a major break in trust, and you immediately go from circumscribing to terminating. Or you might think that everything's going well and you're not actually acknowledging the steps that are actually leading to the downturn in your relationship, and it ends and you're going, hey, I didn't have any notice. It doesn't mean that you necessarily always get those steps for notice. Also, some relationships build and bond really fast. Some people are really quick. So you may have heard the jokes that in the lesbian community that on the first date they show up in a U-Haul. Um, I haven't been so lucky in my lesbian relationships, but that is something to think about, is how fast the person actually ends up wanting to be with you. And so just thinking about where you are, how fast you move through these steps. Sometimes they take years, sometimes they're weeks. So just think about this and think about what stage you might be in your relationship with different people. This is also great to think about for your scrapbook assignment. So make sure that you actually go through your scrapbook assignment and you can actually track how that is in your own relationship with the person you've chosen. It is also a great thing to track when you're trying to make sense after a relationship ends. How it happened is actually trying to see those different steps and how your relationship fit into those. These are just a few things to learn about, and so I hope that you got something out of this video.